Discussions in this show are for entertainment and educational purposes only and should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and neither SmartPro Financial nor Bridgeway Wealth are affiliated. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Working Wealth Podcast. I'm Patrick, and I got my good friend and colleague Trevor Rasmussen here with us today. We are going to get back, like we mentioned in our last couple episodes, to providing some good education resources around different financial tools and principles and helping you actually understand how to move forward in your financial life. Took a quick detour and did a bunch of interviews with business owners and other influential people in our community. We're getting back to our basics here going forward, and we're excited to do that. You know, based on a lot of feedback, but also just a feeling like we needed to do those kind of things.
Yeah, and we got a big one today, Patrick.
Yeah.
Got a doozy.
Really? Set it up really good. Yeah. Doozy. So why is it a doozy? I'm curious.
I think that a ton of our clients and a ton of the people that are hopefully listening to this podcast are going to be affected directly by what we're going to talk about today, / are living right now with the things that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I completely agree. So before we jump in there, quick plug. If you have not watched our last few episodes and given us a 5-star rating and liked and shared with somebody you think could be helpful or could get some help out of that, please go back and do that. I'm not ashamed to make that plug. We're trying to get a little more traction here. So take a quick moment. Make sure to do that for us, please. But let's dive on it. So what we're going to talk about today, like Trevor mentioned, is something that does impact a lot of our clients, a lot of people here in the upstate as well as across South Carolina, and that is public benefits.
Yep, absolutely.
Sounds laborious, doesn't it?
It does, and it's something that everyone just kind of scratches their head. They're like, I think I know what that is. Don't know what that is.
Yeah.
We're going to break it down today.
Yeah, exactly. So when I say public benefits, like we're talking about specifically South Carolina's state retirement benefits. And this is one of those things where there's a lot of confusion, but there's so many people that are impacted by this. We have teachers, we have county employees, we have city employees in some cases. Anyone that works for like Spartanburg Regional Hospital System, they're part of the program. You have old legacy hospital systems that are part of the program. Firefighters, police officers, all these different things, right? People that, in my opinion, are doing the hard work. You know, during COVID, look back, like all the essential workers, those people, the ones that traditionally we would say are underpaid for the work they do. This is the benefits we're talking about today because we want to make sure that you guys have a clear understanding of what this looks like and how to really leverage these benefits for yourself, but also where some of the gaps are. Yeah. Right. And how we can expand on this to make sure that you have the right, well-rounded plan for your personal success over time.
So we actually took some time and we went through the PIBA handbooks, the SCRS, the PORS, all the different handbooks for the state of South Carolina. So you guys don't have to, which is excellent. We got to go through that and break down a lot of the plan details, and we just kind of wanted to break it down for you guys so that you have a better standing and a better understanding of what you have going on in your situation.
Yeah, perfect. And Trevor did a lot of that hard work for us, so I want to thank you for doing this. And we made sure we got everything good and clear, so we're going to be good to go. But yeah, so let's start at the top, right? Real quick about retirement planning in general. And we were just having this conversation actually a moment ago with our podcast producer about like retirement and investing and all these kind of things. And when we think about retirement planning in particular, it is such a simple equation, but we always say like it's simple, not easy, right? There's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of complexity that can be built into this. But the simple equation is, do I have enough money on a regular basis to pay for the things that I need plus some wants and wishes?
Yeah. It's as simple as that.
That's financial planning, right?
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of things you get into there of like, well, how do I generate the income? How do I make sure I don't overspend the income? How do I have protection for like the unthinkable? How do I maybe grow money to be, more ubiquitous or like more free flowing to do other things that I want and wish, all that kind of stuff. And that gets back to the nuance of the planning side of things. But when we think about just the basic equation, it's how much expenses are going out, how much money do I have coming in, and even breaking that down further is the income that's coming in, how much of that is stable or like guaranteed or fixed, and how much of that is unstable.
Yep.
And we've done some episodes in the past talking about this. We've done some webinars breaking down like that retirement education or retirement equation, of like what those numbers look like and how to do some estimates and things like that to make sure you're on track. But when we think about that equation, specifically income minus expense needs to be ideally positive, at worst case 0, right? But breaking down the income, you have guaranteed, non-guaranteed, stable, unstable sources. And when we think about the state-based benefits, for the most part, this falls into the guaranteed or stable sources.
Which has a huge impact in a lot of people's situations. We actually, Patrick, we love stable income when it makes sense for that particular individual. It's just that guaranteed money, that sure thing. You're not having to deal with market fluctuations. You're not having to deal with all the, the ins and outs of what's going on in the world. You've got that consistent cash flow coming in every single month like clockwork. And it gives a lot of people peace. And that is ultimately what we try to do. We try to give people in retirement peace about their financial situation and help them achieve the goals that they want to achieve.
Yeah, completely agreed. So thinking about the benefits with the state today. So everything we've got information about this stuff comes directly from the state organization, PEBA, the Public Employee Benefit Authority. So feel free to go back and double check, fact check, let us know if we did get something, sideways, or as we're talking, if we say something doesn't sound right, we'd be happy to dig in deeper because we can't cover all the nuance, right? We want to cover a high level, what are the basics and how does this stuff work for you guys? And then from there, we can talk about, specifics around your personal situation. So let's start off like high level, the main plans that are available. The most common plan we see is a defined benefit plan. So can you just break down defined benefit plan versus like defined contribution plan for people?
So these terms can get a little scary. Defined benefit plan, what does that mean? Really at the essence of it, the core of it, defined benefit plans are just an entity, usually your employer, like the state of South Carolina, if you're a South Carolina employee, telling you, hey, I'm going to give you a guaranteed benefit, a guaranteed pay every month for life once you hit a certain requirement in that particular field. We'll go through those more in depth. Whereas a defined contribution plan is kind of what people traditionally think of as like maybe a 401k plan or something like that, where they've got a workplace sponsored retirement plan that they're putting money into every month. They're choosing the actual investments that go on in that account. They're responsible for the growth. They're responsible for the losses. They're responsible for managing all of that aspect of it. Whereas in the defined benefit plan, your employer is taking the investment risk for you. They're making those investment decisions for you. And then they're basically, while they're doing that, they're also offering you a defined, guaranteed benefit at the end of your career in that field.
Right. And that is, so a lot of people might be familiar with the term just pension, right? So pensions fall under the defined benefit side of the IRS code, whereas 401s, 403s, 457s, all that stuff is the defined contribution side, right? And so South Carolina does offer both types of plans, right? A few different DB plans as well as a DC plan. So we'll talk about those here. But let's dive in first of all to the defined benefit programs, right? So two primary ones, the SCRS and what a lot of people call the PORS. So do you want to break down like just high level how those apply, like who those apply for?
Yep, absolutely. So SCRS is the South Carolina Retirement System. That's typically going to be public workers like teachers, public employees in cities and in governments, things like that. And PORS is the police officer retirement system. And that is typically what we would define as like first responders, so police officers, firefighters, medics, paramedics, all those kind of employees that are really like on the front lines, who are reacting to dangerous situations, things like that. You have a separate plan set aside called PORS. So SCRS, think of teachers, public servants, PORS, more kind of your first responder clientele.
Yeah, and they're very similar, right? Like side by side, until you get into the weeds and the nuances of like contribution rates and how interest is credited, like that's where there's a little bit of nuance.
Yep.
But on a high level, they are very, very similar programs.
Yep.
So,
You're taking part of your income, you're giving that to the employer. They're taking it for you, investing it over time, and giving you a guaranteed benefit at the end of your career.
yeah.
That's the big breakdown for both of those plans.
Yeah, exactly. So let's break down, or let's dive into some of the details that do make them unique. Before we jump right into the numbers, though, one thing I will reiterate is if you are part of it, or if you work for an employer who is part of a state-based plans, there can be some differences of how they apply this. For the most part, if you have access to the SCRS or the PORS program, a lot of employers also have supplemental benefits, or they give you access to the Deferred Compensation Program, which is actually the state of South Carolina 401k and 457 program, which, going back to what Trevor mentioned earlier, is part of a defined contribution program.
Yep.
So a lot of employers offer like kind of a duality of you get this as your base, but you can also participate in this. But how they might do employer matching or employer contributions, that can be very different.
Yep.
Like a lot of employers, maybe you're part of SCRS and you have the 401k 457 plan accessible, but the employer is putting money into your pension fund rather than into the 401k with like a match.
Yep.
And that goes back to, again, like your personal plan, your situation. Let's evaluate what's actually going to be the best case for you.
Yep.
So let's talk about SCRS first. So we've already broken down what the pension is. What is the contribution rate, like mandatory for SCRS?
Yep. So this can be a double-edged sword. A lot of clients that we talk to love that they take, the state requires this minimum, contribution from your paycheck. Some people not so much, but that rate is actually currently at 9% as of the recording of this video. So 9% of your paycheck every month getting pulled out and thrown into your pension plan.
Yeah, and is that how is that taxed? That 9% that's going in?
Yeah. So that is going to be pre-tax. So essentially, that 9% is being pulled out of your paycheck before taxes are withdrawn, and that actually is a benefit because it reduces your taxable income. So you're actually going to pay less in taxes throughout the year. With that defined benefit plan, with that money, that 9% being pulled out. The caveat there is when you go to actually live off your benefits in retirement, you're going to pay income tax on that, on those withdrawals, on those distributions.
Yeah, right. So it's just like a pre-tax 401k, like an IRA, things like that. So, and then how does that balance grow over time, or does it grow over time?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, and this is where we have a lot of questions around. Oh, well, what's my rate of return? What kind of returns am I getting on my account? So the state actually gives a guaranteed return, and that is a consistent 4% every year. So regardless of how the funds are invested on their side of things, regardless of market conditions, the state of South Carolina is guaranteeing a 4% growth in your benefit plan over each year. So it's 4% is 4%. It's definitely going to grow over time, which is the good thing.
Yeah, and so here's where I think there's maybe some of that confusion for a lot of people is that 4% growth. Like if we compare it with market investments, like investing in the 401k and IRA, Roth, things like that, it's pretty dismal. Right?
Yeah,
like it's not you're not getting S&P or market based returns. But the whole point of that is like your actual best way to increase your pension payout in the future is fixing the variables that affect what that payout is.
Yep.
Which ultimately the payout down the road is based on your final compensation.
Yep.
Right. And that's where there's even some different components here of what that payout can be. But on a high level, right, there's a formula where you take your highest period of earnings or average final compensation, multiply it by a few different factors, and then that pops out what your ultimate, pension benefit will be, right? Like the max pension benefit you can receive. So you get the 4% interest. One thing that's also important though is that interest only accrues while you're an active employee.
Yep.
So like if you're a teacher for 15 years and then you have young kids and based on your spouse's employment, you decide to like stay home and not be a teacher anymore, and maybe you're not going to be a teacher anymore, not going back into state-based employment. That's a common conversation we're having with people. You're getting that 4% while you're employed, but once you terminate and you separate from service, that account doesn't grow anymore.
Yep.
right? You still have your banked pension benefit down the road because that's based on your final compensation before you left, but you're not going to have that account balance grow. Yep. And that usually leaves us with a really important pivot point in discussion is, what do I do with that money? And that oftentimes, not saying it's every single time, but oftentimes where we lead to is we can actually roll that money, whatever that accrued balance is inside the pension fund, over to an IRA, get that money start growing for you actually in the market and increase what that amount's going to be.
We can in good years get above that 4% return, which is going to help you tremendously in the long run.
Right. And give you, there's a lot of reasons too. You get more flexibility, you get a lot more control, opportunities for Roth conversions, things of that nature to really enhance your overall financial plan by doing that.
Yeah.
But so let's talk about, so we talked about, 9% pre-tax contribution. It's a 4% interest credit per year. That's 9% your pre-tax contribution. Some employers do put in additional, as a match, and that's just based on the jurisdiction you work with or work for. The actual formula for how the benefit is paid out, it's kind of a complex one, right? Do you know it by heart?
Yeah, I do. Okay. I do. So it is actually. I don't know where they got these numbers, so I'm just gonna.
It's all actuarial tables.
That is, it's based on your. There are a lot of factors based on your age, your life expectancy, things like that. But the state of South Carolina has come up with a formula of 1.82 times the years of service times your average final compensation, your largest. It depends on which tier you are, which we'll get into that.
That's the next step.
But essentially, based on your highest 3 to 5 years of salary in that position, or overall in your entire career in the state, they will take that, multiply those factors together to give you your monthly benefit.
Yeah. So the average final compensation times 1.82% of that number, times your years of service. So if you look at your benefit statement on PIBA, it shows you how many years, months, and days. They actually do the math of how many years, months, days, turn that into a decimal, multiply that, and then divide it by 12 to pop out that monthly. Right? So you mentioned the tier 2, tier 3, or class 2, class 3 employees. So what is the difference there? Because we see a lot of people they get that benefit statement. That's part of our intake process for prospects and clients. Is we want to understand what these numbers are.
For sure.
So if you go to piba.sc.gov, you log into the retirement benefits site, and on the top right-hand side of that statement, it says class 2, class 3. What is the difference there?
Yeah, so it all revolves around one very critical date, and that is July 1st, 2012. Okay. So we base our entire understanding of tier 2, tier 3, class 2, class 3 based on that date. If you started employment with the state of South Carolina in any capacity before July 1st, 2012, you are fortunate enough to fall into that class 2 or that tier 2, which will give you a little bit better benefit than tier 3. As time has gone along, the state has adjusted its pension program, has adjusted its benefit program for employees. As things have gotten more expensive, benefits have changed to reflect the times. And so basically, if you started before that date, you're in class 2. If you started on July 1st, 2012 or later with the state, you're in class 3.
Okay.
So it all revolves around that one date in July of 2012.
And so the fundamental differences of class 2 and class 3, that goes back to your average final compensation calculation, right? That goes into that formula we talked about a moment ago. That also affects your vesting requirements. And then ultimately it affects, because of the vesting and because of the average final compensation, what your final benefit could be, right? How long you have to wait to get that.
Exactly.
So the class 2, what is the average final compensation based off of?
Yeah, so it is based off of your top 12 quarters from your career. Okay. Which is, let's break it down.
Break it down simple.
Top 3 years. So you take your salary, let's say you made $35,000 as a teacher starting out, when you first got going in 2005. You work for 20 years to 2025. And let's go back to 1995. Go back to 1995, you're in class 2, you work for 30 years up to now, and you retire. Essentially, you started with a $35,000 salary, but you ended with a $75,000 salary.
Because you got your master's plus some extra credits.
Yep. Okay. They will basically look at your top 3 grossed years, your top 3 salary years, and they'll take those as their numbers for the calculation. So that's fortunate. We don't want to go off of our first couple years when we were way down at the bottom. We want those top years to really be what we kind of draw our benefit off of.
Yeah. So that's the class 2.
Yep.
And then class 3, how does that change?
Class 3, it gets a little tougher. So it is the top 20 quarters or 5 years of salary. So instead of 3 years, top 3 years, you're taking your top 5 years. What that does is for most people, it's going to make it a little bit more difficult to hit that higher salary because you've got to have more years involved.
Yeah.
So you made $75,000 for 3 years as a class 2 employee. You get to claim all 3 of those top years for your benefit. But let's say you're in class 3 and you made $68,000 the 2 years prior to your last 3, and then you made $75,000. Well, you're not going to get that same benefit that a class 2 employee on those 3 $75,000 years are. You're going to have to take those 3 $75,000 years and then your 2 $68,000 salary years, combine that benefit, average it, which is going to give you a lower number.
Yeah. Gotcha. So it's essentially a dilution mechanism is what it is.
Yep, exactly.
So I want to pause there and like make an important point. We talk about this all the time, and we kind of steal this from Dave Ramsey and his organization is your income is your most powerful wealth building tool.
Yep.
And that's why like one of the best investments you can make in yourself as a career over time is actually investing in your career, not for the sake of working just to work, but for the sake of generating more value for your employer, generating more value for the impact sphere that you have, and ultimately getting paid more for that.
Yep.
Like I've had a lot of clients over time that started out just as regular teachers that went back and got their master's. They got a $10,000 pay bump.
Yeah.
Right? Or maybe they got into administration and now they're up, after 15, 20 years of working as a teacher, they're making $80,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's a far cry from that $32,000 starting point 20 years ago, right? And that's going to be the way that you can actually increase those benefits substantially over time is consistently working strategically to increase your income.
Yep.
But on the flip side of that is like the pension is not the end all be all or shouldn't be in our opinion. There's other things we can do on the side with that, and we'll talk about in a few moments.
Absolutely.
Right? But so thinking about that, we have like highest 12 quarters, highest 20 quarters, those kind of things. Another important factor with the pension is like any pension, there are vesting requirements. And vesting is just this concept of when do I actually get the full benefit that is available to me, right? So can you break down for us just high level, what is the actual vesting requirements for this program, for the SCRS?
Yep, absolutely. And once again, it all revolves around which class you're in, which tier you're in. So for Tier 2 employees, you're going to have a shorter vesting period. I believe it's 28 years, Patrick, just off the top of my head.
In total,
28 years or 5 years once you hit age 65. So basically, if you retire before the age of 65, you need at least 28 years of service in the state to qualify for your full benefit. If you are older, let's say you start and you're a teacher at 55, you make a career change and you come into the state and you're a teacher at 55, you actually only need 5 years of service and reaching the age of 65 to actually qualify for that benefit, for a benefit as well.
For a benefit.
A benefit. It's going to be reduced compared to a 28-year tenured employee, but you can still qualify for that benefit. So really, for Tier 2 employees, the baseline for you to actually qualify for something in retirement is 5 years of service.
Okay.
Yep.
So 5 years, like even if you go work for a state employee at 57, you work until you're 64.
Yep.
You've got 7 years baked in. Like you're going to get some kind of benefit from the program.
You're going to get something. Yep.
Gotcha.
You're going to get something. For Tier 3 employees, it's a little bit longer. It's 8 years of service.
Okay.
And that actual main benefit, so Tier 2 gets the 28-year rule. The Tier 3 employees actually have what's called the Rule of 90. And the Rule of 90 essentially is your age plus your years of service. Add those two things together. They have to equal or be above 90 to be fully vested in that program.
To be able to get like the full benefits.
Yep.
Okay.
So that is let's just say that's a 45-year-old with 45 years of service. I know that's a ridiculous example, but essentially you would have to take those two, your age and your years of service, add those together. It's got to be above, it's got to be at or above 90 to qualify for your full benefit.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. Perfect. So so there's different mechanisms for how that works. And everyone's situation is different. That's where like high level information here we can actually break down the nuances of your personal situation if we want to do some retirement planning and look at the numbers, right? So we have a lot of details here. There's some other things I think are important to break down, which is like if you do leave employment, right, that benefit that you have, there is inherent value there. And even if like while you're still working for the state or you're part of the benefits program, we love to understand what those numbers are, because that value that's in that account, although it's not a true investment account growing like other market type investments, it is part of your net worth. Right? Because if you were to pass away, there is an incidental death benefit associated with that balance. If you got $150,000 in that account, well, guess what? Your family receives a $150,000 death benefit when you pass away in most cases, right? So talking about how we actually get benefits out of this program over time. I think that's an important thing, because let's say we work, whether we're class 2 or class 3, we get fully vested, we get to the trigger age for full retirement benefits, and we're going to start drawing our benefit. This is where you have a very important decision to make. And there are 3 different options for what your payouts can be. We call them option A, option B, and option C, right? And keep it really, really simple, right? So like your maximum possible benefit is going to be option A. So that is if I do the math and I multiply my highest 3 or highest 5 years of consecutive earnings, to get my average final compensation times the 1.82% times the years of service divided by 12, that's my max benefit is going to be option A for my lifetime. Right? So like if I have a benefit of $3,000 a month, then I will receive $3,000 a month until I pass away. Now, maybe my account balance is say $150,000. If I receive $3,000 a month and I receive 2 payments of that and I pass away, well, that doesn't mean that your family doesn't get anything. That means you actually still get that death benefit paid out of the $150 minus the $3,000 you've pulled out for 2 months, right? Option B is a reduced benefit, but that is a guaranteed payment for your life, and then that payment stays the same for whoever you designate as your beneficiary or beneficiaries, right? So we call it 100% joint and survivor. That's a common pension language. But let's say like instead of $3,000, it's going to be $2,600 a month. Well, that $2,600 is going to be paid out for my full life, but maybe I die 2 months later and I have my wife listed as the beneficiary. That $2,600 will continue to pay out for her life. And then
sorry, no, Patrick, I was just going to say, when would you make that choice between option A, option B? Like, what do you think kind of is what should be people thinking about as they're making these decisions?
This is where I'm going to go back and kind of disclaim and say financial planning requires a nuance, right? It really depends on a lot of factors. Of number one is what does your income need? Right. Number 2 is going to be what is your rest of your financial picture look like? Go back to that math equation we talked about at the beginning. Do I have enough income coming in to cover my expenses, and how much of that is stable versus unstable? That's going to drive a lot of those decisions.
For sure.
What are my goals? What are my wants? What are my needs? What are my wishes? Do I have other investments or savings to fund those kind of things over time?
Will my family be taken care of if something happens to me?
Exactly. And that's where I would say this really goes back to working with a competent partner who understands the rules, understands the details and nuance of the situation, and can help you make the most informed decisions. That doesn't mean always making the best decision or the right decision right away, but being able to ask the right questions to ultimately work together collaboratively to find what the right answer is for your situation. There's no one size fits all, right? That's one of the things is we love to keep things simple, but simple is just clear. Clarity comes from digging into the weeds and then establishing what is the clear answer after you do that process over time.
Thank you so much.
So, of course. And I think that's a good lead into option C as well. So option C is you can get a payout of a slightly reduced benefit for your life, and then you have a 50% benefit payout for a beneficiary's life, right? So if I'm saying any of this wrong, you let me know. But that $3,000 a month, maybe I have a slightly reduced benefit from my life. But then once I pass away, I could have a child as the beneficiary. I could have a spouse. I could have a grandchild as the beneficiary. It's very flexible in who you can have, but that person is going to receive 50% of your benefit for the rest of their life. So you think about generational wealth and generational opportunities, that option C is a real nice ticket.
Imagine being able to gift that to a grandchild or a daughter or a son, being able to give them that stable income for their entire life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an incredible tool that we can use and have the option to use in many cases.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And again, goes back to the nuance of your situation and how we want to go about it.
Of course.
One of the cool features of this, though, is like, let's say you choose option B or option C, and the people you designate as beneficiaries predecease you.
Mm-hmm.
The cool thing is, like, let's say it was a spouse and you don't have any living children or you never had children. Well, if you choose option B to start with and your spouse passes away, you can automatically switch that back to option A and start receiving a higher benefit. Same thing with option C. If your beneficiary predeceases you, you can switch back to option A and receive that higher payout over time.
Yep.
So a lot of really cool benefits, really cool options here. Going back to high level, like this is a defined benefit program, right? You get a guaranteed amount of money for the rest of your life, the rest of your beneficiary's life, depending on which option you choose for your payout.
Yep.
There are some separate nuances and benefits around like disability, if you had to retire early because of disability, or if you have like how the health benefits play into here. That's a whole nother topic with a lot more complexity.
Yeah.
But just in terms of the benefits, it's a great resource to create some stability of income in retirement down the road.
Absolutely.
One thing I do want to say when we say guaranteed and stable, that doesn't mean fixed necessarily.
Yep.
So just like pretty much every other pension out there, there is a cost of living adjustment, right? We call that a COLA. Just like Social Security has a cost of living adjustment each year. Break down real quick the cost of living adjustment and how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. So the cost of living adjustment, the COLA, is just essentially like an inflation adjustment each year. So the state of South Carolina currently has a 1% increase every year up to a maximum of $500.
Okay.
So essentially, let's say you're getting $3,000 a month in your current plan. You could actually receive a 1% uptick in that, which would be $300 on $3,000. No, sorry. I am not doing.
Do that math.
$30.
Yeah.
$30. So it's a
okay.
ton of money.
Yeah.
But it's not a ton of money. But you can get a 1% increase year over year, up to $500.
Yeah.
So
perfect.
Yep.
Okay.
It really just breaks down into that.
And that'll be determined like each year, like looking at the numbers, you'll get an updated like benefit update number, all that kind of stuff.
Yep. Absolutely.
Perfect. So we covered a lot of stuff on SCRS. We said at the beginning, PORS is very similar. Let's go to the PORS details, just break down what are the variations.
Yep, absolutely. So PORS, like you said, Patrick, pretty much identical. There are a few slight nuances. So first responders actually do have to contribute 9.75% of their income, pre-tax dollars. So instead of that 9% rate for SCRS employees, you're going to get a little bit more of that 9.75% pulled out of your paycheck every month. There are also different vesting requirements. They're a little bit shorter. We still have the Class 2 and the Class 3 designations, same date of July 1st, 2012. But those different benchmarks are, I believe, 27 years for Class 2.
Class 3.
For Class 3, and then 25 years for Class 2.
Yeah.
So a little bit different vesting requirements. That's still that 5 and 8 year minimum requirement. So you've got to be in the state as an employee, as a first responder for a minimum of 5 years as a Class 2 employee, a minimum of 8 years as a Class 3 employee. But those full benefit ages, those full benefit year amounts are a little bit different than the SCRS.
Yeah.
Don't have the rule of 90 here, just a solid 25, 27 year mark.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yep. And then the 5 and 8 year vesting, just for both of those, is like if you have been employed and you're over age 55 and you started employment or you start employment like around that age, work above age 55, as long as you have that 5 or 8 years, that's where you get vested to get a benefit.
Yep, absolutely. And Patrick, that's a really good, I'm glad you brought that up. So for SCRS, with those minimum vesting requirements, the age limit there is 65.
Gotcha.
For first responders, it's 55. So you get that kind of 10-year hedge. Obviously, most first responders, they're very active. They're putting their body on the line to save people, to help people. It's just a more physically demanding job typically than a lot of SCRS employees. So the state kind of gives you that added benefit of you can be younger. You can kind of get your full retirement benefit at a younger age so that you're not putting your body on the line into your, late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah.
So that's a really nice benefit that PORS offers.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other key differentiator here is the compensation or the calculation for final compensation and what the benefit is, right?
Yep.
So we said SCRS is 1.82% of that AFC number. This one is 2.14%.
Yep.
Right. So you get a little higher payout option as well.
Once again, rewarded for the demanding job that that our first responders go through, physically, mentally, psychologically. So
yeah. Perfect.
Yep.
So that's the defined benefit options primarily. The two that we encounter the most, right? Like that's the details of those. Another option that you have through the state, there's really two more I want to cover briefly, is you have what's called the ORP, right, which is the optional retirement plan, and then you have the defined contribution plan, or the South Carolina Deferred Compensation Program is what it's called. That's the 401k and 457 through Empower at the time of this recording. So the ORP, a lot of employers over the past several years, and probably really the past 10, 15 years, I would say, have offered this ORP option, which is the same contribution mandate, right? It's like 9% of your pay pre-tax goes into this account, but this is not an account like the defined benefit pension. This is one where the state does not carry the investment risk. Instead, you actually carry all the investment risk because the account itself is a 403B under ERISA laws or under IRS codes, right? 403B is very similar to a 401k. It is a defined contribution plan. You put money in, the money's used to buy investments, and you get the benefit of growth of those investments over time. 403Bs are typically just an investment account for not-for-profit or nonprofit employers is what it is. There's some other rules and nuances around how they actually operate and compliance requirements, things like that. But it's essentially like the not-profit or nonprofit 401k, right, for all intents and purposes. So you still have that 9% pre-tax contribution, but the money goes in and you choose the investments. This is something I do want to really hammer on real quick is there's a misnomer out there that if you have an employer plan like this, like a 401k, 403b, simple IRA, things like that, that your employer is doing your investment research for you and making sure you're in the best possible investments. And I'm just going to tell you right now, that's flat out wrong.
Yes.
By law, your employer carries zero responsibility for making sure you're in the right investments. Zero responsibility for your 401k investments, for your 403b investments, simple IRA, et cetera. These are all types of investment accounts set up under the IRS codes starting back in the 70s to allow you the opportunity to defer your income into an account and then get the benefit of market growth over time. That's where, again, working with a competent partner to look at your options and make the best decision for the right investments for your personal goals, your personal plan, to get the best benefit of growth aligned with your needs is important. All too often, pretty much every single time when we come across new prospect conversations.
It's rare when it's not this way. So sorry, Patrick, to interrupt.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
It's very rare every time.
Right. So the thing I'll say is like most people are in what we call a qualified default investment alternative. Really, really fancy long name trying to make a lot of lawyers sound important. It's a QDIA, Qualified Default Investment Alternative. This is your classic target date mutual fund. If you look at your account on your 401k statement or 403b statement and it says, the mutual fund company target retire 2055 or 2025 or whatever. That's called a target date fund. Those are automated for the most part portfolios. It's all inside one fund. It's going to shift your risk based on a standardized risk glide path to go from more aggressive when you're younger to more conservative as you get older. It'll get you there, right? Like it's going to help you get to a destination. It's not necessarily going to help you get to the right destination or get there on time or get there quick enough or get there with all your bags intact, right? We love to look at those plans and actually make a good informed decision around what investments we're using, get out of the target date and be more proactive and intentional with what the right solution is for your personal planning. We actually have a new service with SmartPro where we have our institutional investment team will look at those investment options for you and run them through a filter of analysis to decide what is the right risk exposure to get you into the right path over time. So just taking a quick detour there, but that is the ORP, right? Technically, it's a 403b program, still the 9% pre-tax contribution, fully vested, right? From day one, just like a 401k, your contributions are fully vested, employer growth, employer contributions fully vested. If you leave the employer, you roll it out to an IRA,
Yep.
just like any other kind of 401k account.
Really high level, I think, Patrick, and you correct me here if I'm wrong, but I think the ORP gives you a lot more flexibility in the investment options and how you actually decide to put your money in over time.
Yeah.
But the caveat there is you don't get that defined benefit at the end of your career. So there are trade-offs for both of these types of plans, the pension plans and the ORP plan. More flexibility equals more risk, and it's all on you, versus less flexibility in the SCRS and the PORS plans, but you get that defined, clear, promised, guaranteed value at the end of your career.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
trade-offs, something we're going to have to look at for each individual client and help them with,
Yeah.
walk through this and navigate this.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I would say it really goes back to what are your needs?
Yep.
What is your situation? And we were big believers, right? Is that there's no one size fits all. I've probably said that 100 times already on this call or on this recording. But if you can find a good way to have some stability to cover the needs and then also have opportunity and flexibility and more growth, we love that, right? So like a lot of our clients that do come to us in their 30s and 40s or maybe even late 20s that are part of a state-based employer, we say, yeah, you've got the pension. Like that's 9% of your income's going there regardless. We can't really do anything about that. Let's now start funding maybe a Roth IRA on the side, or let's start funding some kind of brokerage account. Or, maybe if you have that option for the South Carolina DCP, which is the defined or deferred compensation program, the 401k and 457, let's look at those options.
Yeah.
Let's try to take advantage of any option there. Maybe your employer does some kind of match based on how they've set up their county government or organization. Let's be intentional to get as much flexibility over time. Because the last thing you want is only have guaranteed pension income down the road, and then you don't have any margin you can use to fund other things in the future.
Yep, absolutely.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think that this is a really powerful opportunity for state employees in the state of South Carolina to be able to put, that 9 or 9.75% in the case of first responders into your defined pension plan, and then go above and beyond that. We love to use Dave Ramsey's number of 15% or more into retirement. So if you can put 6% plus into, like you said, Patrick, something that you can kind of control the investments in, whether it's the ORP or the deferred compensation plan or, an IRA, a Roth IRA. Like, we love people that have both that steady guaranteed income and that market exposure and growth there.
Yeah.
Having both of those is a superpower. We love when people come in with both of those things going for them.
And if you don't have that, we're going to encourage you as much as possible based on your plan, if it fits, to generate both.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
We work with a lot of folks that have started, kind of mid-career or mid to late career in state employment, first responders or nurses or teachers or otherwise, where it's like, well, hey, we know we're going to get here, right? Yeah. Let's plan for the things we don't know. And again, like we were talking about before we started recording, is the best way to beat inflation and create more capacity for yourself is to own the companies that ultimately generate inflation.
Yep.
Right. So like if you own stocks, you own companies that are increasing their value by increasing prices and generating more profit, you can ultimately, further enhance your opportunities for flexibility and growth over time.
Absolutely.
So as we kind of come to a close, just touching briefly again on the deferred compensation program, that 401k, 457, this is similar to the ORP, right? All of your contributions, growth, that's all 100% vested. It's yours to take with you when you leave employment. There are, around the state, some like local retirement plan advisors that can help out with certain decisions there. My philosophy on that is like work with an independent advisor so that you can actually have someone look at your total picture. A lot of those other contracted employees or contracted advisors, they can't legally give you a well-rounded picture or well-rounded set of advice for your overall situation. But regardless, like whatever you do, like start soon, right? It's really, people don't think about this, but like the sooner you start, the more time you have. And it's really not those first years of when you start that generates the most compounding. It's the last couple years that get the most compounding, right? If I make 10% on $100 I put in, that's great, $10. But if I started that 30 years ago or even 15 years ago, and now I've got $100,000, and I have that last year because I started sooner, like 1 year sooner equates to 1 year longer down the road, right? That last year at 10% on 100 grand, well, that's 10 grand,
Yeah.
right? And we're just using some round math to make it easy, but there's nothing that you should ever try to do more than like use your time well.
Yep, absolutely.
Like your time is your one resource. You cannot get back. Money will be there. Time is not.
And we've seen so many different calculations, Patrick, of people that are high earners that start later in their career actually saving for the future versus those humble, working class people that don't make tons and tons and tons of money, but they started when they were 20 years old and they did it consistently for 40, 45, 50 years.
Yeah.
And they've got millions of dollars in retirement. It's pretty cool to see like how impactful time on your side, time in the market, not timing the market, time in the market over a long period of time can really just shoot you to the moon. Whereas, people that start later, you've got to work a lot harder. You've got to contribute so much more to get to that same level of someone who started way younger. So
exactly.
We love telling people, hey, as soon as you can start.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us for today to talk about this. We know we covered a lot of like details and, like little nitty gritty numbers and rules, things like that. There's a lot more there too. And again, every person's situation is a little bit nuanced. You got to dig into what you need and what you have going on. But reach out to us if you have questions. We'd love to help you evaluate your situation and make the best decisions going forward. Also, give us a good share, give us a like, let us know how we can help you out better, help out your community. And other than that, I guess we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
So thanks so much. Appreciate it. Discussions in this show are for entertainment and educational purposes only and should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and neither SmartPro Financial nor Bridgeway Wealth are affiliated.